Okay, now everything you say can and will be used against you. We are recording. I have just a few minutes to 4. Does anybody have, is that about this time? Or for you it's still 3, sorry, I'm from the Eastern time zone. I think we've still got a few minutes before we're going to get people drifting in. All right, while we're waiting on folks to drift in, anybody in the room attend any of the training on Thursday? Did you? What'd you go to?
Build a module training.
Build a module training, was it good? Yeah, they typically do a pretty good job. So we are kind of reaching towards the end of the day. Has everybody felt that the camp has been worth the price of admission? That's what I like to say. Has it been worth the price of admission, what you paid and giving up your time to come? Good, good. That's what we strive for in the Drupal community.
So it reminds me of the Atlanta camp in 2013, like the last one that MidCamp, like workshop.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that caliber, which that was like a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah.
Huge, like turnout. This is like the same kind of turnout, the same kind of feel, which is really awesome that you're doing close to home.
Yeah. I was really disappointed. Media Current's over in my neck of the woods, and I always go to the Atlanta camp, and I was really disappointed that they felt the need to pull back. But I understand why, because it really takes a lot of effort to organize a camp. So I understand where they're coming from. Was disappointed to see it happen. The folks that took over afterwards, they're doing a decent job. Then they're learning. Some of them are new. They've never done a camp before, so it's going to take them a time or two to kind of get the thing down. But they did. The camp last year was good. Yeah.
I wanted to make it, but it's just time.
Yeah. Wow, I actually with the Silex and the Ansible, I wasn't expecting really this kind of turnout. This is great. So I think my guys all said, "You're on the same time as the Ansible and the Silex. We're going to those." And I'm like, "Well, okay." Bring back notes. Tell me all the goodies. Hi.
I am serving as your room monitor this afternoon, so if you need anything, just let me know. Okay. There's some water. Okay, so I will go and try to find some.
Okay, thank you. I've got a cup right there if you want it. I know there were some water dispensers around on some of the tables, so that would be perfect. Thank you so much.
There was bottled water on the podium yesterday.
Yeah, there is. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I've sent her off on a tour. Shall we cut up while the room monitor's out? I won't tell.
I think I remember you were in the 2013 one, right?
I was there. Yeah.
Did you go up to what was it? Like the restaurant after like with the Lee and like the whole.
Yep. Lee Walker. Yeah, he's from Chattanooga. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was at that. I was like, she looks familiar. And I remember those like.
Small world. Somebody said there was bottled water underneath. I didn't know that. Right, we're taking down to 3 o'clock.
Because all of a sudden it was just in there and like, oh yeah, I gotta stop.
I'm surprised to see you here. You're going to heckle me? I'm surprised to see you here. I figured you'd be in the Ansible or the Silex.
No.
No.
And so is Johnny. Besides, and I'm more interested in this.
Just don't throw rotten tomatoes at me.
I don't have any. You're gonna have to stick with my hotspot or something.
It's going to be fresh to me. You know how hard it is to go buy a rotten tomato?
All right.
It would be green.
Well, we've hit 3, and so I know it's getting toward the end of the day, so why don't we go ahead and get started. Welcome to Visual and CSS Regression Testing, catching the unintended consequences of modifying your theme. I am Lisa Ridley, and I'm a solutions architect for ProMetSource. ProMet's one of the sponsors of the camp here. This is my email address. I am LH Ridley on Drupal, also LH Ridley on Twitter. I'm LH Ridley just about anywhere you go. If you see LH Ridley, it's probably me. And I also have a blog where I do some blogging on occasion. Although I haven't done much since I went to work for ProMetSource, they're keeping me busy right now. But it's at codementality.com. I'll probably post these slides up there. They are posted. If you pull up the MidCamp site, there's a link on there. The slides are up on SlideShare. So if you want to not take notes or just take notes on things that I'm talking about that's not on the slides, feel free to do that because the slides are out. All right, a little bit about ProMet before we get started. ProMet's been around. It's based here in Chicago. It's been around for about 12 years. And they pretty much have always centered on doing client applications that are written in open source software. Been doing Drupal since about 2008. Doing some mobile app development since around 2009. We have project managers on staff. Our preferred technique for project management is agile project management. When we're doing client projects, we'd like to use agile methodologies whenever possible. We have a push internally for using automated testing and continuous integration in our development processes. We use Chef and Git and Jenkins and Travis and all those goody little tools. Our DevOps guys are currently looking at Docker as a way to speed up some of our automated testing processes, because once you start testing, you find out that you always want those tests to run faster. So we're looking at ways to make that happen. Show of hands, right quick. How many site builders do we have in here? Okay, got quite a few. Okay. Developers, front end? Back end? QA? Any QA folks in the room? Anybody that wears all those hats? Yeah. Any other folks, project managers, folks that are just interested in looking at? Okay. All right. What is regression testing? Can anybody in the room tell me what regression testing is?
When you think you fixed something, but you broke something else.
Well, yeah, that's it. That's the short and sweet version of it. It is a type of software application testing that seeks to uncover new bugs that you've introduced in existing components when you have made changes to one component of the system and you find out that they affect, unintentionally you've affected another component of the system. How do you regression test the visual components of a site?
Click, look. Click, look.
In fact, pretty much we were talking here, and they're using a tool for doing visual regression testing that's similar to what we're going to be talking about in here. But is anybody else using any tools for that?
I have a bunch of automated test CSS selectors and stuff in there, but
right.
Visually we can't do it. I started playing with it. There's a Google visual comparison tool where you can screenshot and then compare. I can't remember what it's called because I didn't finish doing it.
Oh, you know what? I haven't run across that one. That would be kind of neat just to look at as a project.
I can't remember what it's called. I guess I could be.
Yeah. So you've got PHP unit and simple test that'll do your that'll do your functional and non-functional testing, business logic testing. Behat will test your user experience and the user interface interactions that you have built into your application. Doesn't have a thing to do with your theme, unless your theme actually removes or changes, the way that some of those functional elements actually interact. Then you have to change your Behat test a little bit. But for the most part, your Behat's going to test that if you're able to click here and do this and navigate to that, that all that works. But visual regression testing, or regression testing the visual components, that's a challenge. Up until some of these tool sets started to emerge, pretty much it was all somebody sitting and doing what he said. Click, 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 look, compare to the PSDs, compare to any screenshots you might have of the site at a different point in time. But it was someone manually doing that process. So what if you could take a before and after picture? And you could compare those pictures to each other.
These would be sad because we gained 40 pounds.
Would that be, does anybody think that would be of interest to, besides gaining 40 pounds? Yeah, because the camera always adds weight. Does anybody think that might be of interest? Okay. Well, that's where Phantom CSS comes in. Phantom CSS is a tool for doing just that, for doing visual regression testing. It uses a couple of tools underneath the covers. Phantom CSS is a module plugin for a tool called Casper.js. Casper.js is a framework that's written in JavaScript for automated testing of interfaces. And it drives another tool, also written in JavaScript, called PhantomCSS. And PhantomCSS emulates browser interactions with a site. So you've got these three tools that are coupled together with one more small JavaScript library called Resemble.js that's bundled with Phantom CSS that actually does visual image comparisons. So you have these four tools that work together that will take snapshots and compare them, and will show you what the differences are in those snapshots. So the way that it works is that when you've got a set of tests written in Phantom CSS, you run that set of tests against your site before you start doing any programming changes or theming changes to that site. And you build what's called your baseline screenshots. And you can take screenshots of entire pages. That one, depending upon the size of the pages, you may struggle with that one a little bit, because if you've got some pages that are really long and they have lots of things going on them, those tests can take a long time to run when you actually run them as a test. But you can take snapshots of entire pages. You can isolate components on a page and take snapshots of components and establish a baseline. And then you go away and you do some theming and you come back and you run that same set of tests again, and it will take those exact same snapshots based upon the criteria you define, and then it will compare them. And it will give you yet a third image. You've got your before snapshot, you've got your after snapshot, and then you're going to have a third image that actually compares the two, and it outlines for you what all the changes are between the before and after picture. What does that look like? Well, this might be a baseline image snapshot of a component of a page. And then this might be the snapshot afterwards. Now, this is a pretty simple comparison, but you see that we've shifted some text to the right. Well, take that component and put it in a page with a whole bunch of other stuff that's going on, and you may or may not see it when you're visually looking at it.
I don't see it there.
You don't see it there? Well,
Until you said something.
This is like a
whoop,
quiz.
and we lost video.
Do a couple. We can compare that.
Okay, yeah. And so that's what Phantom CSS generates as the difference image. So it outlines for you, in very vivid color where the change happened between the before and after picture. So it has some dependencies. We talked about some of those. Phantom.js or Slimer.js, which is another JavaScript browser engine emulator that is based more on the Firefox engine, whereas Phantom.js was based on Qt WebKit, which is the actual source of the browser engine behind Chrome and Safari. And then also Casper.js, which will work with both Slimer and Phantom. And those those are the primary underlying drivers for Phantom CSS. Now, if you're installing this on a continuous integration server or a testing server, putting it in a Linux environment, you're going to have a few more dependencies. Some of these packages you're going to need to install if you're putting it on a Linux server. Font config, free type, TTF Deja Vu, that installs some open source true type fonts to use as base fonts. And then TTF-MS Core Fonts installer installs some Microsoft fonts on a Linux server for use. If you're using Slimer.js, because Slimer doesn't actually run in what's called headless mode, which means that it can run without a display being attached to the computer, which is typically most of your continuous integration servers run without a display. So you have to have something that acts as a display if you are running a browser that runs in what does not run in what's called headless mode, which means that it's not sending images to a display somewhere. Then this XVFB is an emulator that will run, and it will intercept those images without generating an error message back to the original browser program and let it continue to do what it needs to do. It basically just captures the images and doesn't do anything with them, but it lets the browser think that there's a display installed. You may find that there's other dependencies if you start using Phantom CSS, primarily related to fonts that you need to install. If you've got some images that aren't displaying fonts the way that you think they are, it's probably because you're missing a font on your testing server. The skill sets that you need to write tests for Phantom CSS, if you're a developer, front end, back end, you've already got those because it's a very basic set of skill sets. They're all written in JavaScript. And this, at its basics, is pretty much what a Phantom CSS test set looks like. Now the highlight that I've got there in bold, that's the key component. So you've got basically the first couple of lines are some setup. You're basically saying this is the page I'm working with, and this is the size that I want my viewport to be when I run my tests. And see, everybody know when I say viewport, that everybody knows what that means? Okay. And then the line in bold is actually what you're driving Phantom CSS to do, which is to take a screenshot. You can take a screenshot of a whole page. You can take a screenshot of a particular component on the page. You define what you're taking a screenshot of or a snapshot of with a CSS selector, just like you would if you were programming JavaScript or jQuery. And then the image name is actually, when it takes the PNG snapshot, this is what the file name is based on. And then the rest of the components, the set of lines underneath the bold is actually the component of the test that actually executes the image comparison component. And then you have to indicate that the test is completed so that if you're running it through a continuous integration server, or if you're looking at it on the screen when you're running the test, you get a message back that tells you that all the tests are done. And then the very last line just exits out. And that's important if you're using a continuous integration server, so that Travis or Jenkins knows that the tests are finished. The JavaScript objects that you'll see used and that you will use if you're writing Phantom CSS tests are the Phantom object, which is basically your browser object. The Casper object, which is the browser driver, the thing that interacts with the browser. And then Phantom CSS, which is simply a plugin for Casper. And it basically links Casper and the Resemble.js library, which does the image comparisons together. Now, the author of Phantom CSS has some recommended best practices. Phantom CSS is not going to replace functional testing. It's just not. It is yet another enhancement on top of your test suite. He's got on there, don't use complex CSS selectors. The only thing there is it takes a little bit longer if you're using really complex ones to run those tests. If you're using complex CSS selectors, then you probably need to simplify your HTML and your class structure on your website if you're having to use really complex ones. Just the same as if you were writing any JavaScript or jQuery set of scripts. Name your screenshots. By default, Phantom CSS will call them screenshot 1, screenshot 2, screenshot 3. Well, that really doesn't mean a whole lot. But if you're looking at a folder that's got 25 screenshots in it, if your image names actually have something that's somewhat descriptive of what that image is a picture of, just kind of helps you when you're going through images looking for something. Don't try to test all the visuals. This one is somewhat important because these tests, because we are taking snapshots and pictures and we're doing a pixel by pixel comparison of these images, they are going to take some time to run. So you want to be selective about what you're testing. If you know for a fact that you've got a site that every time you make changes to it, you break the menu system, or every time you make changes to it, you break the footers, then that's definitely one of the components that you would want to include in your testing suite. So you kind of need, it's one of those judgment calls that you want to make. You could theoretically test it, but good Lord, it would probably take all day to run those tests. And he says full screen snapshots are a bad idea. And the longer the page and the more things you've got going on the page, the more true that becomes. If you've got pages that, maybe are only 2 or 3 screens below the fold, you should be fine. But if you've got a lot of complex things going on, or you've got really, really long pages, then it is going to take quite a while to do those image comparisons, and you may want to break down, maybe snapshot the top portion of the page and the middle portion of the page and then the lower portion of the page. It will help to speed up that image comparison when it happens. There are some limitations with Phantom CSS right now. There's no support for Flash. Aw. Yeah, I know, we're all so sad. Slimer.js actually will support the display of those Flash placeholder JPEGs, but Phantom.js doesn't. It may require that you install some non-standard fonts on your testing server before you start running tests, or if you encounter pages where you're taking snapshots and you've got things that aren't displaying. You know how when you've got a font that's missing, you get those little boxes, or you get fonts that you go to a fallback font. You probably need to install a font on whatever system you're using to take those image snapshots. So there again, just kind of have to, if you're not the one that manages that server, you're just going to kind of have to work with the folks that do and kind of help them understand what fonts you're using so that they can get some fonts on that server for Phantom.js to find when it does those snapshots. You may get some false test failures. Now I've had this happen on occasion, and this is what the author actually addresses this when he goes through the documentation. Due to spatial aliasing of anti-aliased images. Everybody know what that means? Yeah, that's what I said. Basically, it's the subtle differences between machines and the way that they display images, because my Mac may have something that causes an image to be displayed just ever so slightly differently in my browser than yours. Or Windows and a Mac are going to, even running the same browser, you're going to see something just ever so slightly different. Those will generate a failing test, even though it may be just a few pixels for an icon that's up in the upper right-hand corner, of the display. But those do happen on occasion. The biggest place where you'll find them is if you've taken those snapshots, you've taken your baseline snapshots on a different machine from the one that you're running the comparative shots on. Now this is one that I ran into, and there's a bug filed on this one. It has not been addressed yet, but it is supposed to be addressed in, I believe, PhantomJS version 2.0, and they've traced this back to PhantomJS, but there's also been some argument going on about whether or not this bug resides in PhantomJS or it resides in Casper.js. And that is that you can have page elements, and we all do this when we're theming a responsive theme, and we've got page elements that we're hiding and showing based upon the media size based upon your media query, or you make changes with JavaScript to hide and show images. Then some of those images or some of those elements on a page that have a display of none, and then you change that display. Phantom CSS sees them all as not visible, even though they very clearly are. You can take a screenshot and you can very clearly see them on the screen, but if you try to click it, Phantom CSS can't find it. All right, I do have a test site for us to look at. We're actually going to run some of these tests. And this is kind of what our site looks. This is a wireframe of the front page. We're going to run the tests on the front page. And we've basically got a fixed header and a nav bar. The nav bar items here are mega menus, so they're going to be nice big components, and we're going to snapshot the mega menus on the front page. In fact, we're actually going to tweak those mega menus just a little bit and see what happens. And then you've got a front page slider. Now, notice I've got that in gray. One of the things the author of Phantom CSS, or the maintainer of Phantom CSS, recommends is that you try not to test components that are constantly changing. Well, what happens with a slider? It's constantly changing. You've got images coming in, images flowing out. Because you snapshot it today, or snapshot it now, and then when you go back and you run your test and you snapshot it again, and you may have a different image in the slider, and it'll generate a failure. I think you can ignore it. I think there's a way to ignore those images, and you define it by a CSS selector. I haven't tried that, but I believe somewhere when I was going through all the documentation that I read that. We've got a pre-content section on our front page that has some blocks of information, and the entire block changes on mouse over. It changes color. So we're gonna, as we take our snapshots, we're actually going to snapshot that section, and then we're going to snapshot it with each one of those blocks in the hover state. So you can see that it will capture the hover state color changes. And then we've got a 2-column content area on our front page. We're going to snapshot the left and the right hand components as separate components. And we've got a fixed footer. And we're going to snapshot the footer. So we're going to get the header, the nav bar, and the footer. Those are all fixed components. Then we're going to get the pre-content blocks, the 2-column content area, each left and right. And then we're going to get each one of the mega menus that drops down off of our menu navigation bar. It's about 20 images total. All right. Bear with me while I get this up and running.
You need to do a dance for the intermission?
Are you going to entertain us?
Oh no, they don't seem amused.
Okay, so this is a theme that I picked up off of Theme Forest. You can find this theme out there if you want to get it and play with this. I made a couple of little minor tweaks to it. I liked the visual components of the theme, and then I bought it and I saw some of the HTML and CSS underneath it, and I went, ooh, I'm not sure that was a good choice. But anyway, had some nice bright colors and some distinct regions that I was looking for. So pretty much here's what our front page of our site looks like that we're going to be doing some testing on. And the mega menus that I was talking about, we've got nice big mega menus that drop down here. Yeah. Yeah, see, so now here is a YouTube video that's embedded. PhantomJS will pick this up as Flash, and it will say, you need a plugin for the browser. Well, as far as I know, there is no plugin that exists for PhantomJS for
Have this video watching.
Flash. Do what?
Have this video watching.
Yeah. Okay, and this is just another one that's got some placeholder images in there. We've got this nice little menu that basically you get with a theme that shows you all the different components you might have. I mean, the blog it takes you directly to the blog page, but then we've got a contacts mega menu that has an embedded Google map and then some information on it. Interestingly enough, on occasion, this one actually triggers a test failure because sometimes the snapshot happens before the map image fully loads. And so if you've got that happening, it may and you've got a map displayed on the page, it may very well be that the snapshot got taken before the image was fully loaded. And you do have a way, if you've got that occurring, that you can make it stop and wait. So you can put a wait in these tests so that you can wait for images to load or other components to load on the page. So we've taken a look at our site. We kind of know how it's laid out. Now I'm going to run some tests and get some baseline images. And there's a couple of commands here that I'm running ahead of time, so I've just put it all in a real short bash script so that I could, rather than you sitting here watching me type all these in, we could just get them running really quickly. That's fine because we've not run any tests yet, so there are no images in those folders. And then I'm making sure that my cache is cleared on my Drupal site. And now, when the blue bar comes up, that's actually Phantom CSS starting to run. You can see it's taking a screenshot. It's giving you some feedback for each one of these shots that it's taking. Now you'll notice when it's taking the ones that have hover indicated, I actually had it wait just a few seconds before or a few milliseconds before it took the snapshot because I wanted to make sure that the color came in. Because it's got a fade, I think there was a fade in and a fade out effect. So I wanted to make sure the effect was fully there and the color was displayed before I grabbed that shot. Okay, and then it gives you a message here that says, this must be the first time you ran this because we didn't find anything to compare it to. So if you really want to see something, change something and run it again. And that's what we're going to do. So I've decided that I want to move some stuff in one of the mega menus. I want to give it a little bit of pixel padding on the left. So I want to just kind of shift everything over to the right just a little bit. If we look at the menus, the specific menu I want to change is this one. So if we look at the menu and we inspect the elements in the page, we'll see that we've got some selectors here we can work with, maybe. Let's see if we can't make that a little bigger. So we've got, here's our drop-down containers. We're probably getting pretty close to what we need to be working with here. And a little further. Okay, you can see we've got several divs nested here. Got some classes on them. Right here's what I want to move. I want to shift this over to the right. About 15 pixels. And well, it's wrapped in a P tag, so I could apply 15 pixels to the P tag, but I'm probably going to get a lot of stuff shifted to the right that I really didn't mean to shift if I do that. But just for giggles, why don't we do that anyway?
You got a line height up there that's misspelled.
I've got a what?
Line height.
Oh, I see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's an eye height.
Like I said, when I peeked under the covers of this, and I went, ugh. Alrighty, and I very well may have done that in going back and forth. Okay, so we've made a change. So let's run our test again. And now this time we're going to go through and we're going to get some comparative images. And you'll notice that this will take a little bit longer to run because not only is it generating that second set of images, but it goes through and it does comparisons for any tests that fail, and it gives you those images as well so that you can see outlined in nice bright red what those differences are. Takes a little while. Before it actually starts spitting out messages, it does all of the image snapshots, and then it goes through and does the comparisons, and then it starts giving you some pass and fail messages. You can see we've got several of them that are failing. I really only wanted to change that one menu. What did I do? Oh my gosh. So every one of those failing tests is where Phantom CSS has pulled up the before shot and the after shot and done a comparison and said, oops, I found differences. This fails. That's all it takes to trigger a failing test. It can be, and there is an adjustment you can make within the setup of the script, and if you want to give yourself a tolerance of like 0.5% or so to kind of handle some of those anti-aliasing issues, you can. That's actually what the authors tried to do to try to mitigate some of the anti-aliasing issues that he was encountering when he wrote this tool set for them to use at his company. But the more you adjust it, the more error prone it becomes. So because the more difference it will accept before it generates a failing test. So, all right. So we've got, I think almost every page failed. Surprise, surprise.
There was one pass.
Did one pass?
Surprised any passed, actually.
You're surprised that any passed? So we had out of 20 tests, because we're taking 20 images, so we've got 20 tests. So out of 20 tests, 16 of them failed. So we had 4 of them that weren't affected by adding a padding to that paragraph tag. So we can actually look at these images. Give me just a second. We'll pull those up. No, wrong one. Probably ought to go into Phantom CSS demo.
So you're not working.
Yep. All right. And I'm gonna do a real simple. Just gonna put them in cover flow fashion, and we'll just kind of go through the images. All right. Can you see that? Yeah.
Make it bigger though.
Oh, come on. There it goes. All right. So our footer failed. So there was our footer. There was the diff image that shows us what happened. You see everything's kind of got shifted just a little bit to the right. And there was the after shot. Now, if you were visually looking at the before and after shot, you're probably not going to catch that. Phantom CSS did catch it. This is the right column of the content. That one, that one actually passed. I'm surprised. This one is the, I'm sorry, that was the right. This one's the left-hand column. That one failed. You can see that there's just ever so slight shift in that text. Also on all those images. So there's some of those icons are residing inside the paragraph tags. Here's our pre-content blocks. We've shifted all of those to the right. Let's see, that was our navigation bar. Didn't really affect that. That was our header that's on the page. Didn't really affect that. This is just a screenshot of the front page, and boy, we got a whole lot of stuff that changed on that one. You can see we've got the sidebar there that changed. We've got our footer. We've got our pre-content block. There was that before and after image. Here's the images in hover state. So this is where we're hovering over the right-hand block, and you can see the color change. So you can actually test that. And there, of course, all of those, the text shifted just a little bit to the right. So this was another failing test. Each one of those is going to fail because it's the same content. It's just changing the color. Now here is the contact us, mega menu open, and this is a shot of the entire front page with the menu open. And then we've got just the menu. You can see where it's outlined in red all the changes. We actually got the map loaded on this one, so it didn't. That particular item didn't generate a failing test. So anyway, we can go through all these, but you get the gist. This is what happens. You see the nice bright red. You can actually, if you want to use a different color, you can actually change that in your settings for your test. If you want to use yellow or orange or magenta, whatever your favorite color is, you can use that. You can change that up. For me, I have a little bit of hard time seeing some of the colors, so red's pretty darn bright. And if you're using something that's got a theme, you may want to use a color like yellow. Just kind of, you can tweak that based upon the particulars for the site that you're running the tests on. All right. So we need to go back and see if we can narrow down our selectors a little bit and our CSS and see if we can get some of these tests. Now we're going to wind up with failing tests all through this because there are changes that we intend to make, and all that Phantom CSS knows is that you're asking it to compare a before and after snapshot. It doesn't know what changes you've made. So if it finds a snapshot that's different, that's going to flag as a failing test. So that, unlike doing regression testing functionally or through the user interface with a tool like Behat, you will probably almost always get failing tests. But what it does help you do is that if you've got 20 components that you're looking at and 4 of them failed, then you know that your other 16 are fine. And you can focus your efforts on those 4, and you can visually see pretty quickly what changed, and maybe you intended that to change and maybe you didn't, but it's easy for you to pick them out. So I think it's a time saver, personally. All right, well, let's see if we can narrow down our CSS a little bit. See if we can focus on the text that I'm actually wanting to shift is on the courses mega menu. I just want to pad that a little bit on the left. So I've gotten a little bit more specific in my selectors here. I'm using the mega menu selectors. I just want to shift the text. I don't want to move anything else in the mega menu. So I've tweaked my CSS, and I can run those tests again. Since I still have the same baseline images, the tests will be compared to those same baseline images, and what will happen is that the images that were generated before will just get written over. So we had 16 failing tests our first time through.
So I've got a question. Does this compare against your last run then with everything shifted over?
No, it doesn't. It actually, unless you change where those images are going to get written and you copy over those baseline images, those images are always going to be overwritten. You can save them if you want to, but you need to set up a different folder for image storage if you do that.
It looks like if you delete the images, then you just replace them by running the first test.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Then you replace them by running the first test after you delete them.
Well, you've already made changes.
Right, but to reset yourself.
Yes, you can just, what you could do is if you wanted to keep those images but run a second set of tests against the same baseline images, you could just copy those baseline images into a new folder and then change where Phantom CSS is actually looking for those images, and then it will generate a new set of images, and it won't overwrite the previous set. But you have to physically put them in a different location.
Right, so I guess what I was asking was, for the workflow, there's one page that changed, and I wanted it to change.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like I can delete the images of that test.
And once you verified that only the components that you wanted to change, then yes, what you would want to do at that point is generate a new set of baselines. Okay, so how many tests do we have fail that time? Well, we had 11 failed, so we got a few more passing. So we're still probably not where we need to be. Looks like our footer's still failing. I'm not sure that it should have been because we had a mega menu selector on there, so that may have been a lingering image from the previous test since there was a failure image generated to begin with. I tried to set up in a bash script to delete all those failed images, but I may not have my bash script set up to do what? Yeah, that's true. That may have actually impacted that. Okay, well, I guess I can make that a little bigger where everybody can see it. Let's go back up. All right, well, I see we've got our map giving us some grief there. That's wrong way, sorry. Now the one thing, there are some other tools out here that do this, and we'll talk about those in just a few minutes. Okay, so looks like we're still getting a little bit of something going on with the footer. So may need to go back and look at what I've done on the CSS selectors again. All those components look like they're now fine. Don't have any failing tests. Got a failing test here. Now, this is what I was talking about with the map loading. May not have quite got the map loaded completely. And so the whole map showed up just about as failing test. So that's kind of some of those things, those pitfalls where you get those false failures that I was talking about. But all the text to the right still shifted. So yeah, we probably do need to do a little bit more tweaking. Now, here's where we're getting to the menu that I'm actually wanting to affect. It looks like I've moved my text, but I've also moved some buttons on the page that I really didn't intend to move. If you'll see them, they've shifted down, but now part of that's because we've shifted the text to the right, and it's just continued to flow down the page. But if you'll look, all those buttons are also slightly shifted over to the right, just a little bit. So that wasn't what I intended to do. So we need to go back, definitely need to go back and tweak that CSS a little bit more. So now we've gotten into one of those specific CSS selectors that we were talking about. This one is getting fairly specific. I've had to use nth child to actually get down to the specific component that I was wanting to impact with this. When you have to get that specific and you have to start using selectors like nth child, you probably need to go back and refactor your HTML just a little bit. But that was in the theme that I had purchased for this, so not my doing.
Doesn't fall in my problem.
Do what? Yeah, that falls into the not my problem bucket. That's right. And if I remember correctly, what we should get at this point in time is we should get 2 failing tests. And these are actually going to be the indicators of the specific components that I'm actually wanting to affect with this change.
Does this help us do things like run the test on one machine or browser and another machine or browser and compare the differences? Or?
Well, you could do that. You could run your baselines on one machine, and then you could run the same tests on another machine and compare the images across machines and see just how different, one machine versus another's rendering. Yeah. So what it's not going to do is do Firefox versus Safari or Firefox versus Chrome, because PhantomCSS is actually the browser that's running. So it's going to be the same browser. So it's got limited usefulness. If you're trying to theme things to show up the same in Chrome and in Firefox and in Safari, yeah, it's not going to help you with that, because it doesn't run Chrome and Firefox and Safari. It runs PhantomCSS. Okay. Look like we still got 11 failing. That's not good. Okay. One of the pitfalls, and this is one of the things that snuck up, and this may be what's catching us here, of Phantom CSS is that, just like any other browser, it caches images. But unlike most browsers that you use on a daily basis, like Firefox and Chrome and Safari, there is no easy way to clear that cache. So,
Did you run your first test while that line
Yes.
at the table?
I think so, yeah. So that may be what's generating 11 failing tests, is that we've got to change in the line height.
Mismatches are pretty small. You're talking like
Yeah, yeah.
10% in a lot of them.
Yeah, see, and that's the other nice thing too, is it gives you the percentage change for each failing test, so you can see, whether it was changed, you've got a component that's, 8% of your page is different, or only, 0.1% of your page is different.
I just want to say, that percentage sometimes can be actually a telltale.
Yeah.
Our boss dropped us at closing time, said, look at this information, what's wrong, and all the ellipses on the read more. It's when we were testing this. He commented them all out. He's like, what's wrong with this picture? We don't know. So it could be your views, your Drupal views could be broken.
Right.
And he used it to show that the ellipses were wrong. So it was 1% on the full page screenshot, but it was it could be a mission critical item that's at 1%.
Exactly. And that's where you have to use some judgment. Like I said, there's a bit of a fudge factor that you can adjust as to how much difference you're willing to accept before a test is flagged as a failing test. So if you know that there's a particular component on a set of, that you're analyzing on a set of tests that is going to, have at least 2% difference, then you may want want to isolate that component into its own test, and then 2, you may want to adjust that percentage variance that you're willing to accept for that particular component. So we go back and we look, let's see. Yeah, I think the line height issue that you were talking about is what's coming into play here. But you can see that based upon the diff image that's showing where all the differences are in the page, we've got the text, which we expected to shift over to the right, but we've got our buttons that are no longer shifted to the right. They're just shifted down. And that's probably due to the line height issue that was in the CSS.
Or word wrap.
That or word wrapping, that's right. So that's pretty much it. That's what I have. This is kind of what you see. There are some other tools out here that do this. You mentioned, was it you? I think that mentioned the Google has. Yeah, I hadn't run across that one, but I had run across Wraith. Wraith is a tool that does something very similar to what Phantom CSS does. Wraith is written in Ruby, and whereas Phantom CSS uses a JavaScript library to do image comparisons, Wraith uses ImageMagick. I think because it uses ImageMagick, at least what I saw is it seemed to me that the tests were taking just a little bit longer to run.
They were actually pretty quick.
Are they?
The trade-off is it's all full-page screenshots.
Yeah. Okay.
You lose a lot of granularity, at least from the overview of it. I know you can like really take it.
Right. Yeah, and there may be use cases for both tools. If you need those full-page screenshot comparisons, then you run those in Wraith if it actually executes them faster, and then you could do your components with Phantom CSS. Okay. Well, that concludes basically the demo. Show of hands. Anybody think that this might be useful in doing your day-to-day stuff? Yeah, I thought first time I saw it, I went, "That's so cool! Why haven't we had these before? This is awesome! I've got to figure out how we go back and use this." And so we've at ProMed, I've used it. We were talking a little bit before we started, and there were some folks that heard this already, but for those of you that came in afterwards, I've actually used it on a couple of clients. When I was beta testing, where we have clients. We have a block of clients that we provide support services for. And so they'll make changes to the site, we'll do upgrades to Drupal modules and things, and then we have to deploy those changes. So what we typically do is we put them on a staging site, we get the client's approval, especially if it's something the client's asked us to change. And then when they sign off on it, we then deploy it to their production server. And I've used it to compare staging and production to see once we push to production, make sure that we didn't break anything. So basically just run it through a series of pages, especially pages that have been historically problematic for that client. Just kind of as an extra security check, just quickly run these snapshots, tell me if anything's different, and then if anything's different on production from staging, then I can pull up those specific images, look at them, see what's different, see if it's maybe just, because the snapshots were taken on two different machines, or was there something more advanced there that we messed up when we did the deployment. All right, I think that's pretty much it. Some documentation. This is probably going to be one of the, if you're interested in using Phantom CSS, this is probably going to be the one slide here that you'll find interesting, because this gives you all the links to the documentation and some of the tools that you would need to be familiar with to write tests successfully. All right, questions? And then there's my contact information if you want it. Yeah.
So the trade-off with the automated testing tools is obviously like how much queries work that you go up front versus how many times that you can run the tests.
Yes.
So that homepage you had like 20 different areas you can find individually you can test.
Right.
Can you speak to how long it took to set up and figure all those 20 areas?
Basically, it's looking at the source. I'll actually pull that particular test up and we'll take a look at it. The whole test itself is about 100 lines, top to bottom, and that includes the setup and the teardown. That's a little small. Let's see if we can't get that a little bit bigger. Okay. You'll see right up here, basically, this is a require statement that pulls in the Phantom CSS library. But right here's the URL of the site that I'm testing. And then here's where I set my viewport name. And I actually made just a couple of little tiny tweaks to Phantom CSS to actually get some more descriptive image names when it actually saved the snapshot images. So I've set this width and height to basically what you're going to see if you're looking at it on an iPad in landscape mode. And so I just called it tablet landscape. And that name actually gets incorporated into my snapshots. I don't know if anybody noticed that when we were looking through the image names that I had tablet landscape in the name of the images. So here's the folders where those screenshots are going to be saved. So we've got the screenshots are going to be saved in a folder called screenshot/homepage, since that's what I'm testing. Any of those failing images, I'm putting them in a subfolder so that I can see specifically just those images if those are the only ones that I'm interested in looking at. And here's where I set my color for that diff image. So I've set it to outline in red. I think by default Phantom CSS will do it in yellow. To me, yellow is a little hard to pick up off the page. Unless you're doing a page with a black background, then you can see the yellow pretty clearly. So I changed it to red, which seems to be working across the board more generally for me than yellow did. So, but you know, there again, you can change that about. And you can also set a transparency on that diff image where you can fade all the stuff that's not different so that the red stands out a little bit more. So this is all part of the setup. And so basically right here, I told Casper start. Start, set the viewport. Now this is one little snippet. This one caught me the first time I started using this. By default, Phantom CSS will will take these images with a transparent background. So if you want that white background that you normally get in a browser, then you have to set the body color here. So. And you're basically setting it on the document. Okay, so I wanted to take advantage of some of the looping capabilities in JavaScript. So I basically set up an array here with some of my selectors and my image names. So what I'm doing is I'm appending the particular selectors to that tablet landscape text that I had set earlier, so that when the images are generated, I'm seeing that it's tablet landscape and it's the home page. It's tablet landscape and it's the header. But here's my CSS selectors that I'm using. Pretty all stuff that we should be familiar with. Is this, Greek to anybody? Yeah, I didn't think so. It wasn't to me. So now I've got a function written where that just runs through those selectors, and that's down below a little bit. And here I've got another set. So basically what I did is when I need Phantom CSS to do something slightly different, I pulled that out in a function so that I could reuse it. And so right here we're doing something just a little bit different with these components because we're doing the hover. Because we're getting the default state, and then we're gonna snapshot the hover state. And then I've got the mega menus, and here I actually have Phantom CSS going and clicking on these particular items, so I isolated them into a third grouping. And I only am doing that, looking at the mega menus, if I have a viewport width that's 900 pixels or wider, because I don't have those mega menus on smaller viewports. So you can actually designate the size of the viewport and use that as in your logic when you're running your tests. So then we have Casper running, check the screenshots. Okay, so here's some of our functions down here. So get the screen elements by selector list. Seems, pretty descriptive. So basically what I'm doing at that point is I've gotten that array of selectors, and I'm looping through and taking snapshots of them. And here's the line that's grabbing my snapshot. And I'm just building a string to use as my image file name. And now here, what am I doing in this one? Get the box selectors. This is where I'm doing the mouse over. So I do the mouse over, I wait for the color to change, and then I take the snapshot. and then I mouse over a different element and I wait for the color to change and I take the snapshot. If you find this useful, happy to post this out on GitHub or put it on one of the sites where you can post code snippets. We'll put it out there if any. Okay, what I'll do is I will post this test out there, and I will post a link to the test back on the MidCamp site. If you don't see it on there, you've got my email address, you've got my Twitter ID. I don't monitor Twitter all that much. I am on Drupal.org, and I'm constantly checking, so feel free to send me an email as a reminder, hey, I didn't see the code for the test you ran, can you post it? Just remind me. So basically, here's why I'm moving the mouse around. So Casper, I basically tell the Casper where I want to move. I move to the logo to start with, just in case that I've got a hover effect at some place to kind of give it a chance to go away before I go to the next element on the page. So then I wait for 500 milliseconds, and then I move over to the box selector where I want the hover state, and then I wait for a good 2 seconds for that color, give that color plenty of time to come in, and then I take a snapshot. And it just loops through this until it's gone through all the elements in that array. And then right here's the one that drives the mega menus. So I basically click on my menu item. I give a good 2 seconds for that mega menu to come down and fill the page. And then I grab a snapshot. I grab the entire page, and then I grab just the mega menu. And then I did a test here because I was getting some timeouts to start with, so I put something in here to flag me if it was timing out. And then I tell it to reload and do it again. Reload and do it again. Reload and do it again. Till I get all my menus snapshotted. And so that's pretty much it. The whole thing is 150 lines, and I've tested 20 different elements on the page, and that includes the setup and teardown. Yeah?
So I just have a follow-up from Chris. So let's say that you had to do it again tomorrow morning, and we had a brand new site, and we would say, okay, we want to test these 5 pages at a single time. So what's the level of effort on setting something like this?
To test.
Assuming that we have the infrastructure to run it like we do right now.
If you know what 5 URLs that you want of the pages that you want to test, the whole thing would probably be about 30 lines long. Be real easy to set up.
Maybe like the morning or just after the morning break.
15 minutes.
Don't say that to the boss.
Now that's to set it up. Yeah, that's to set up the initial script, and then of course you'd want to test it a time or two and make sure it was grabbing the things you wanted. But yeah, it doesn't take long to do it.
What if you didn't have any of the infrastructure to run it, like it was the first time?
Then you need to install some things, and the whole installation process of all the packages and the dependencies. I'm actually going to qualify that for just a little bit because it's going to depend on where you're setting it up at. If you're setting it up on a Linux server, you're going to actually need to install a few more things than if you're setting it up to run on a Mac or Windows, because Windows and Macs have all those fonts installed, and Linux servers may or may not have those fonts installed, and so you might have to set it up, run it, see if you're getting fonts that aren't displaying properly, and then you may have to research what fonts aren't there. But once you get all the fonts loaded, you've got to install PhantomCSS and launch that, make sure it's running. You've got to install Casper.js, PhantomCSS, and then Resemble.js. PhantomCSS and Resemble.js are bundled together. So those are when you install one, you're probably going to be installing the other. Casper.js is a separate package. Although, if you pull the code that's on the PhantomCSS GitHub repo right now, it has a copy of Casper.js in it already. So you can actually get them both at the same time. And it is the 1.1-beta 3 version right now.
Does it have like an npm install or update?
It's basically you just pull it down.
Yeah, I do it all.
And then if you need, what I did is I pulled it down and then I moved Casper.js and I moved PhantomJS over into my, I put it in, I think, user local.
Okay, so you made it.
Yeah, and then I made it global, and then I changed my environment path to make sure that they could be found.
Can you show me where, like, because I see you have several of the, different functions. Where are those called, like get menus by selector list?
They're called up here, right after I build my arrays.
Yeah, I was trying to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's my get screen elements, my selector list.
Yeah, I was trying to find your like
Yeah.
your main loop.
Yep, and there's my get box selectors. And then right here's where I do the mega menu selectors, but I check the size of the viewport first.
So where does it say done at then?
Right there.
And so it's Casper done. Okay, got it.
Yeah, you do Casper done and then Phantom exit. And it's the Phantom exit that sends if you're running this on Jenkins or Travis, it's the Phantom exit that sends the message, the return value back to those tools to indicate that the tests are finished.
It just surprises me that we can't like extrapolate like the parts that we use all the time and then just add like test suites to it or something.
You probably could.
Yeah.
I haven't done that, and I hadn't seen any examples. But I mean, we're including, some JavaScript scripts up here, so you probably could encapsulate, pull it out, and then include what you need.
Most people wouldn't want to have to mess around with the settings or
Right.
the exit pieces.
You're talking about these pieces, the setup right here.
The setup.
I haven't seen that where I haven't seen anything that allows you to put that in a separate setup file like you can with Behat, and then consume it.
Well, I'm just thinking like, have an include down below the start. Have it include like several different functions and whatnot from.
That's when you can see what Rage does, so you can configure it with YAML files, so you can like have the YAML files for each like site, and then you specify like 6 URLs and it goes ham on it. But so you can see how they do it ahead of time.
Yeah, it's just a matter that somebody needs to write a YAML parser for JavaScript.
They have.
Well, then you know what, you probably could somehow manage to incorporate that. I haven't gone that far with it yet. Is it time? Okay. All
Have
right.
you ever done a positive test where you will say like, okay, we need to change this? You go in, and when you see the error files, that would show your changes that you made and that they're made in the right places. You would expect broken files.
Casper.js is doing assertions, so you probably could rig that, but it actually is set up out of the box to test for failures. My guess is that's somewhere in the Phantom CSS script where that failure gets generated.
What I'm saying is in your methodology process, I'm going to be changing the website today. I'm going to be changing some headers. I'm going to be changing some stuff. You can use this to verify changes were made.
You could. The only risk is that if you change something you didn't intend to change
Within the piece.
within the components that you did intend to change,
Yes.
that would be where the risk would come in.